Ontario's legislature is on a summer break, but there's a lively debate about a new statue planned for the grounds. It's a $1.5 million bronze sculpture of Queen Elizabeth II. The late monarch was beloved by many. However, Canada has also faced a reckoning over our colonial past, with statues of Sir John A. Macdonald and others being vandalized. So is this statue a good idea? Ontario's legislature is known as Queen's Park, so it may be fitting that the foundation is being prepared for a statue of Her Majesty Elizabeth II. Government House Leader Paul Calandra says the $1.5 million project has been sitting in a warehouse for years.
It was to honor Canada's 150 years of Confederation. It was supposed to be installed back in 2017.
Now, it's unclear why that didn't happen, but in recent years, statues have been the target of vandals protesting Canada's past treatment of Indigenous people. The Sir John A. Macdonald statue on the grounds has been boarded up for years after a number of incidents. Calandra says the Queen should be celebrated.
She was the Queen of Canada during a time of remarkable change in this province and in this country. And I think when it comes to whether it's Queen Elizabeth or other ways that we honor both our past and reflect on things that we've done in the past, I think we can do both.
The opposition says there hasn't been enough consultation, especially with Indigenous communities. The sculptor has done other works in Ottawa and Toronto, and she is welcoming this kind of debate.
They get shoved forward because of this kind of an endeavor, and that in itself has real value.
The sculpture was inspired by the Queen's appearance when she delivered the throne speech in Ottawa 46 years ago, and it's expected to be in place by the end of this year. So here's the question for you and for our debaters. Is this monument a good idea? This is a tight vote. 54% of you say yes, it is. 46% of you say no, it isn't. Let's bring back Kate and Lindsay. Lindsay, let's start with you. So do you think that this monument makes sense?
No, and honestly, why does it cost so bloody much? $1.5 million, like, where's the coupon? Can someone get them a coupon for a monument? Like, this is insane. I get it. I understand. You know, Queen Elizabeth has had a huge impact on Canada and during a very important time, as mentioned, with, you know, the growth of the country. But at the same time, I just can't fathom spending that amount of money on a statue that's going to be just sitting outside for people to look at. Like, why couldn't we get, I don't know, something of a little more value to us, or costing at least less? Again, I could give them a really good coupon site. There's a great place for that.
Kate, what do you think of it?
Well, I happen to agree, and I think that spending $1.5 million on a statue that is extremely controversial. Canada has a complex history with the colonization of the Indigenous people, and I think a lot of people would agree, especially from the Indigenous community, that that money could be used for so many better things, including, how about, if it's in Ontario here, sending it to some of the Indigenous reserves for clean drinking water. I mean, that's a problem. It's almost like a third world country within our own province, and let alone the rest of the country. Or how about that money go towards the search for the residential school survivors, or goes directly to residential school survivors, or towards the search for missing and murdered Indigenous women? There's so much more that this money could be used for. And while I absolutely do not condone vandalizing and vandalism, I should say, I think there's going to be a lot more money that's going to end up being spent to board it up, glass it in. Who knows what that's going to be, but it's not going to be cheap. And I think this is actually going to open up quite the debate. And you know what? I'm happy for that. Just like the artist said, she wants to get people talking. Well, here we are. We're talking about it. And I think that maybe the Twitter debate there, people aren't quite sure of where that money's coming from, what it could be used for. So there's some examples of what it can be used for.
Yeah, and certainly it's a nuanced discussion that I think a lot of people want to have. And it's interesting because Paul Calandra from the Progressive Conservative government said that this did start under the Liberal government, and so it would seem like that money has already been earmarked, nearly a decade ago. But at the same time, here's a statement from the NDP. The current opposition at Queen's Park. Have a look at it, saying the Ontario NDP has consistently advocated for any new statues or monuments on the legislative grounds to be established in consultation with First Nations and in keeping with Ontario's obligations under the Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner's calls to action. So, Lindsay, I guess, part of the question here is, I think that there's a segment of the population in Canada that does have those sort of warm and fuzzy feelings about Queen Elizabeth II. However, we're now at a point in time when, one would think that a monument to an Indigenous pioneer or somebody from the LGBTQ2A+, 2+ community would maybe be more served or more well received. Do you think that we can do both at the same time, as Mr. Calandra was saying?
I'm going to put it this way. If you want to celebrate Queen Elizabeth, come on to the Queen City. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. That's where I currently live. And Regina, Saskatchewan celebrates the Queen and celebrates the fact that we're known as the Queen City. So we already have that established within our country. And I have very good friends that when I moved to Saskatchewan, I was actually quite surprised how many of them are very much influenced by the monarchy and love the monarchy and celebrate the monarchy and, the Queen and princesses and everything like that. Wonderful. For me, I had to report on some of the missing graves and the graves that were found in Saskatchewan. And that left such an impact with me to know that I'm reporting on something like this, and it left such an impact knowing that they're not being talked about enough. And I definitely think a consultation with someone from the Indigenous community and even maybe celebrating more Indigenous art as well would be worthwhile within the capital.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Kate, because, consultation and making sure that people are understanding or on board, and not to say that they have the blessing, but really that kind of consultation is so important in these types of things, and maybe also the recognition and a sort of plaque beside it to sort of acknowledge that this is on unceded territory and that sort of a thing. How important is that in making these moves going forward because of the reckoning that we've had in this country?
It's still not enough. And to be honest, $1.5 million, we're both going to agree on that. It's going to come down to that price tag. Who needs a statue? This is 2023. That money could be going to so many different parts of this country. And, of course we can celebrate Queen Elizabeth, or those who choose to, and those who choose not to. And that's a freedom we have. But I think that, again, $1.5 million could just be spent in so much of a better way. And, your average Canadian is watching this thinking, wow, even the money, even what could I do with that money, just with interest rates the way they are, our hospitals the way they are. It's a mess out there. And here we are spending $1.5 million on a statue, and a controversial statue to that state. So I don't think a plaque's going to help. I don't think anything's going to help at this state. I think that it's something that those in power should really think about next time as to, where money needs to go in this country.
Mm-hmm. So, Lindsay, then is the issue as well the fact that, we are still erecting monuments and statues to figures of the past? Should we then instead, I guess as Kate is suggesting, really put the money towards the problems of the present?
I do think that the money should be going towards the problems of the present, or perhaps we put them towards something else. Let's celebrate other things. Okay, think about it this way. Sudbury's got the big nickel, right? We've got a giant goose, I believe, as well. Was that Wawa? Somewhere north Ontario. Let's have fun with this. Let's get a discount on some other statues, and let's do it on some other iconic things that we know here in Saskatchewan. I'm going to vote for a Beaver Tails truck because I'm into that idea too. Maybe just some permanent residences across Canada or something like that, so everyone can enjoy them. I really miss them every time I'm living in Regina.
Yeah. Kate, last word to you. I got about 30 seconds left.
Oh boy, you're leaving it to me. I mean, again, $1.5 million doesn't need to be spent on a statue, especially here in Ontario. I think it's a slight towards the Indigenous population. I think it is going to be not taken well, and I hope this does open up the communication. And I do expect there to be potentially protests or, letters to the Prime Minister, letters to Parliament, cries for action. There is just way too much to be spending that money on, specifically within that Indigenous population that needs that money desperately and deserves that money. So that's my stance.
Okay, don't forget this debate continues on our Twitter handle at CTV The Debate. You can go there, leave a comment. Please make it respectful. Do vote in our Twitter take. We are going to come back to that at the end of the show during our closing argument.